On the story now, where the High Court in Pretoria has dismissed the stay of prosecution application by two of the accused persons in the VBS Mutual Bank saga. The court has, however, granted a relief to the pair to have their separate trial. Legal analyst Mr. Kevin Smith joins me now right here in studio to further unpack all these developments. Kevin, thank you so much for making time to come to studio. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. So let's talk about this. In a nutshell, what does this ruling by the Gauteng High Court actually entail? And what is likely then to unfold next, just based on this ruling?
Yeah, I think what's most important to note is the fact that there's been no stay of prosecution. I think that's the most important matter that comes from this ruling, because it then means that the NPA can still instate its prosecution against the two co-accused while the other trial is also ongoing. And my feeling on this, of course, we still have to wait for the court to give its final reasons as to how it got to that conclusion. But my reading of it, I think that it's on the basis that the court doesn't want to prejudice the entire case, because the court's overarching point of departure is whether its decision will be in the interest of justice. And that would be the interest of justice for the co-accused, for the rest of the accused, for the state, but also for, more importantly, for the victims of the VBS scandal. So my analysis on this is that it could be that, given that there's an approach to the SCA that's still upcoming, the court may not want that to then impact the entirety of this case, to ensure that, to the extent that the SCA makes a ruling on the documentation that the two co-accused have asked for, and that now has a bearing on this case, that it doesn't impact the entire case and then they have to run it afresh. So then it can still mean that certain prosecutions can be made as they have already in the past, and certain other documentary evidence can still come to the fore without impacting the NPA's entirety.
You know, Kevin, I'm glad that you mentioned, of course, prejudice against the entire case, because this is what I'd like to know. Will this ruling then not delay the finalization of this matter? As we understand at this stage, there are likely to be more possible arrests in relation and directly relating to this matter. Others have served their sentences. Others are still in detention. So one then wonders, if it's a case of such importance, why can't the state just proceed with this in a single matter? I mean, if you look at these, they were even requesting that the state actually finalize other cases, as you've mentioned, by the SCA first. So doesn't this delay justice being given to the families?
No, I don't think it does. And the reason why I say that is that the NPA has always said that its strategy in a case of this nature will be that it will take it on a piece-by-piece basis. And that's for various reasons, one of which is that the people are being charged under the POCA Act and the PRECA Act. Those, by their very nature, means that there are multiple individuals involved in a concerted effort either to defraud or to racketeer, whatever the case may be.
Different charges.
Of course, but it means that there are multiple players who are obviously concerned with one or the same amount of crimes. Now that in implication means that in the prosecution of one, or in certain of the co-accused becoming then state witness, you will then uncover other players who may have also been involved. You may uncover other intricacies of how the defrauding has taken place, which the state can't necessarily take one case at once, because not all of the information will be available to it. There will be certain investigations that still need to take place. And like we've said, people have already been sentenced. There are people who are already serving their sentences, right? So that means that there's already been justice obtained to some extent. Now it's just that the state is trying to make sure that all of the implicated individuals come to justice. And I feel like this is the right approach to do so, because if you take everything when it's not ripe for trial, for instance, and then the state loses that case, they can't then bring the case again, because then the case will already have been lost. So they're trying to make sure that they put their best foot forward. And to the extent that this assists them in doing so, I'm all for it, because at the end of the day, the state's main concern is justice for the victims, and so is the court.
Very interesting indeed, because one has to wonder, Kevin, then doesn't this compromise the entire case in the procedure that the court has actually undertaken? Because we saw with the leakage of Mr. Matodzi and the repercussions thereof.
I wouldn't say that the separation of these two trials would compromise the case.
In a major way? In
a major way, because this is not unique to this case in the first instance. We need to understand, or the citizens, should I say, need to understand that the legal framework allows for things of this nature to take place.
Of course.
Meaning that this has come to the court's attentions for years already, and that's how the legislature and the Criminal Procedure Act allows for these things to happen. There are various reasons why certain individuals may need to be separated from a case. Sometimes it could be that there have been different pleadings. Some have pleaded guilty, some have pleaded not guilty, so you have to separate the issues. It could be in instances like in poker cases for in particular, like a recent case, SV Naidu, where it so happens that certain individuals, there wasn't enough information that ties them to the rest of the co-accused. So they then have to be tried differently. So there are various instances why you would separate the cases. But like I mentioned, most importantly, is that there hasn't been a stay of prosecution. And that's the most important aspect here. That would have been prejudicial to the finalization of the case or to the interest of justice.
So they're not off the hook yet?
No, even a separation of cases doesn't mean that you don't have even the liability where certain evidence comes against you with the rest of the co-accused. It doesn't mean that that might not be used in the other cases, because for like we've mentioned, this is a concerted effort amongst various individuals. So let's say, for instance, me as one of the separated accused, we have dealings that come out in the other matter where you stand trial with your other co-accused. That evidence comes forward as it is, and you will then have to explain what our interactions were. And if those interactions then shed light on my case that comes forward later, it may be prejudicial to me that I get tried later, because now there's evidence against me that wasn't necessarily there at the start of the trial. So none of this means that anyone will be off the hook, in the same way as that they were already, the mastermind of this whole VBS scandal has already faced justice. So it doesn't mean that anyone will be off the hook. It just means that the NPA is making sure that the cases against each and every one of the co-accused goes through fairly, they stand a fair trial, and the interest of justice are met.
All right, and very quickly, Kevin, we're out of time. What else does this the court still need to pronounce on in regards to this matter?
In regards to this matter in particular, it would just be given the reasons, once the full reasoning comes out, it'll just be for us to understand how the court came to this conclusion. In the event that the NPA finds that those reasons either were factually incorrect or legally incorrect, they will then appeal this matter forward. But as it stands, I think that the court is in very good standing in that regard, and should the reasons come out, I feel like the court will have made proper pronouncements.
Kevin, thank you so much for that sound analysis on this matter. Hopefully you also understand, of course, what that ruling entails that was taken by the Gauteng High Court early today. Well, that was Mr. Kevin Smith, a legal analyst right here in studio with us on the developments around the VBS case.